Alright, Zeno, you little shite. Got me up at 2 in the morning working on frickin' modding stuff. I'm gonna show you how to fix up this vehicle and put in the game step-by-step process, even fixing the particles and whatever else have you. So you better be grateful, dang it. But let's get started, okay? So for starters, we have our textures and our particles, okay? But the particles themselves, they cannot go into the game. Empire at War particles are slightly different from Universe at War particles, and they just don't work. So you got to make new particles, or you got to use particles that already exist. But to edit that, you got to use 3ds Max 9. So we might as well go through that. First thing that we can do is open up our asset. Now keep in mind, what I did before going to the Alamo importer was making sure that inside of Windows, Projects, Invasion, Art, we put the models in here and the textures in here. That way, when you load this, the textures aren't missing. But we don't have to get it from there specifically. We can go into here where we have our CVM3 file. And here's the first thing that we're going to do. First, we can hide the collision boxes right here. The collision, the shadow, all that sort of stuff. Where's the other one? Crusher. There we go. And there should be something else. Shadow. There it is. Okay, so we hit all those objects. Now, everything is pretty much fine in here, but you can tell that this uses a custom proxy right here. And the way you can get this to use a different proxy is you can go back to the Woolard tank and get the name of the proxy from here, and we're just going to copy that and paste it. And then it's going to use the muzzle flash from that tank instead. Or you can make your own particle and you can name it whatever you want. That works too. And then you have a dust particle. Now, let me see if that comes on at any point. If I go into the curve editor and we check for visibility right here, yep, you can tell that the dust kicks on right here, frame 31. And if we check our Alamo utilities, that is during the attack animation. It only has an attack animation and nothing else. So it kicks up right there once it fires. So that's good to know. But second of all, I don't like the way this gun fires. It's very slow. It not only is it slow, but it's just ineffective and kind of goofy looking. So we're going to fix that. But trying to think here what we should do. Let's make the dust the same as the dust for the Woolard tank. So if we go back to Woolard over here and we look at this dust, tank fire dust, it's going to come on whenever the tank shoots, allegedly. So if we go back to our curve editor and once again we check for visibility and we look inside of here, yep, right there. That's at frame 0. Actually, right after frame 0. which is on the attack animation. So dust goes off when it attacks, which is perfect. So we know that it does that. We're going to copy this and we're going to put it here. So that way you have the same particle for the firing of the tank and you have the same particle for the dust. And the other thing that you can tell here is if we go and look at our bones, you can see that the firing particle is attached here. Now what is interesting is that it's attached to a second bone, but you should also be able to attach it to the muzzle bone. I'm actually going to do that because that's the way it's configured on a lot of the Universe at War vehicles. Because if I go back to here and I look for this, now it's actually attached to the turret and not the muzzle. You know what? I'm going to leave it. Just leave it. It's fine. But those are configured, but I don't like the animation. Animation sucks doo-doo. Well, what do you do when the animation sucks doo-doo? First, you can go to your bones and you can find the barrel bone, which is right here. And what we're going to do for the barrel is we're going to get rid of all these other animation points. So it starts to move on frame 31. So we can get rid of this all the way through here. And then we can stop right at the end here. Get rid of these and these. What I'm using is holding left click and I'm pressing delete, the delete key. And what we can do is we can move this all the way to the beginning on frame 0. So that way it goes off immediately. And then we can take this, may it go off on like frame 5. So it's like boom. Then we can hold shift, drag this, and then we have a slow recoil. Boom. Something like that. Maybe drag it out a little bit more. Because I think that looks a lot better. You don't have some sort of massive 1 second delay before it shoots, but rather it just immediately fires after the fact. And then since that stops on frame 40, well, we can actually move that to frame 1. Maybe this to frame 6, 41. We'll change this so that it's from frames 1 to 46. And that is the new firing animation, actually 41. Because we don't need it to drag out that long. So you have your animation for the gun, and the gun looks better, and we have the correct particles associated with it. But you might notice that for the Woolard tank, if we're wanting to copy all the same abilities and all the same stuff, it uses a special animation just for it winding up. Okay, so basically we want to copy all the different animations here just for that tank. So we also have idle 00, so we might as well add that. You can add a brand new animation by pressing the add button. Okay, so we're going to add, and then we'll say from frame 42 to 45. And that's just going to be our idle animation. We're going to put down idle 00. And that's just going to be when the tank is sitting there doing nothing. but then you have power down and power up. And what that's doing is basically there's like a brief time during the tank when its weapon has to prepare to be used. And from what I can recall, those points in the animation are whenever it's preparing to fire. But the thing is, we don't have a spinning barrel on this other tank, so we're probably just going to replace these animations with something that's sitting still. And we have deploy. What is deploy doing? Deploy is also doing nothing. So we have an attack, undeploy, deploy. I don't think we actually need the deploy animations, but considering all of those do absolutely nothing, deploy and undeploy, we're just going to add those and keep them blank. So we'll add an animation, frame 46 to 50. And we're just going to call it deploy 00. And then we're going to add another animation from 51 to 56 or something. And we'll just call that undeploy. Then we'll add another one from 57 to 61, or maybe 62, I don't care. However many frames it is. And we'll let that be the, oh, wrong one. We'll let it be the power up animation. So if I display that, that's when the barrel starts spinning, kicking up momentum. Oh, so that actually takes a while. So we could expand upon that. Let's see. What is 118? Well, 197 minus 118. That's 79. So reasonably, I guess if we wanted to, we can take this new animation and say 57 plus 79 is 136. And then we'll just name it the same thing. Power up to 00. And that's the animation that's going to play whenever it starts winding up to do its ability. So here's what I think we'll probably do for this. We'll just make it to where at the beginning of the animation, it's at this frame. And you can set the keyframe by just clicking this key button, like that. And then we'll drag this all the way out here. And see, here's a little trick that I like to use. Click add and then do 0 from like 200 or something. And then you can see more of the timeline, like all the way through. And what we can do with that is we can hold shift, left click, and drag a duplicate frame out. And that is the point when the barrel retracts inward. Or actually, no, you want this one. But we can delete this and drag this in its place. So we have a wind up animation where it's going like that. So it's like it's preparing to use its ability. And then we can delete this now and keep the other one. So you have power up 0, 0. You have undeploy, attack, power down, power up. And we stole the power up animation. And then we're going to take the power down animation. So that's 117 minus 28 is 89. 89 frames. It actually takes longer for it to power down than it does to for it to power up, which is surprising. But what we can do for that is we're going to add an animation, and it's going to start at frame 137. We're going to take 137 plus 89 is 230. No, I'm sorry, 226. And we're going to copy the name of that, power down. And what we're going to do there is we're just going to drag that frame out here. We can display current and put that at the end. So then it just retracts back out. Now, are there any other animations? We did undeploy, attack, deploy, idle, power up, power down. So yeah, we have all the animations. We've assigned all the same animations to this unit so that whenever it needs to fire, whenever it needs to do all these things, it is going to do it within succession of the other vehicle. Now, keep in mind, there's another thing that we need to focus on, which is making sure that this goes off at the correct time and this goes off at the correct time, which is through a visibility modifier. Because as you can tell with this tank, if we check for visibility here, it goes off at the start. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to copy the same thing. We're going to make sure that this, when it fires, goes off at the beginning and it stays on for relatively the same time. So right now that's at frame 3 and that's at frame 1. So what we're going to want to do is change this Actually, the barrel probably needs to be adjusted just a little bit. This needs to be changed to frame 2. But we're going to make the flash go off on frame 1. And do that by clicking here, going to visibility, grabbing this point, changing it to 1. And then how long does it go off for Woolard? Okay, so it goes here, and actually, yeah, that starts on frame 2, but that's like right when the shot fires. Well, let's see. If I go back to attack animation, that goes off on frame 2. Yeah, actually it goes off during the recoil, so I should probably put that on frame 2 as well. But taking a look here, this goes off. Oh, no, it's at frame 1. Frame 1, frame 6. So we'll do the same thing. Frame 1, and then we're going to add another point right here. We're going to set that to 6 and change this to 0. So the particle comes on when it fires like that. I never noticed that there's no bottom to the tank. That is kind of bad. Whatever. But regardless of that, we have this particle as well. And we can check when this goes off. And okay, that's where I got confused. That one goes off on frame 2 and then turns off on frame 13. And if we scroll through this, it doesn't activate at any other time. So we'll add that to the attack animation as well. So this dust should become visible on frame 2. Then we add another point. Where it will become inactive on frame 13. And it just stays inactive for the rest of it. And that's basically changing it to where the particle goes from being invisible to visible, and then back to invisible again. And that is so the ground kicks up dust whenever this thing fires. Now, also, just taking a look at the way the turret is structured. I'm not sure if we would want to separate the barrel so that it tilts up and down. And we can test that and we can take a look at it by doing something like this. Because what's going to be funky, all right, is when it recoils, it's going to do this. And I'm not sure if we want it to do that. But if the turret was the bone, how funky would that be? It would tilt down like this, or it would tilt up like that. Both options are pretty scuffed. Either that or you can keep it pointing straight at all times. I suppose we can go with the barrel bone. Or we can add a new bone, but I don't think that'd be necessary. Basically, it's going to rotate at that point. Yeah, I say we keep it. It's fine. So we have our animations, we have our muzzles, our muzzle, and we've reconfigured the proxies. Everything looks good in here. So what do we need to do? We're going to export the vehicle is what we're going to do. So you go to File, Export, export as ALO. And then let's just export it straight to our mod, because why not? We'll call this MV Super Tank, or whatever you want to call it. Super Tank, I don't know. Wasn't it like the CVM3 whatever? What was the original name? CVM3. Yeah, that should work, and then we'll just save it. And that should be in the mod now. So if we go to our mod and we check on it, yeah. Oh, I called that a copy. I might have put that in the original. You know what? That's fine. I put it in the wrong thing, but I also named it wrong anyways. So CV, yeah, I put it in here. That's fine. I'm just going to rename this to 2.6. I cannot do that because the folder is open. Frick me. We can close this out. And what you can do as well is don't just export it and always import your projects. That's a bad idea. What you want to do is go to File, Save As, and save it as a 3ds file. And when you do that, you can always reopen the project without having to import all the stuff again, which is way easier, but also gets the data more accurate when dealing with the models. So we'll just call it CVM3 or whatever, just save it for now in case we have to go back to it and there's something wrong. Something that does puzzle me is there's a couple bones right here, muzzle B1, but those shouldn't matter. Those can stay right there, probably for some sort of ability or some unused thing, but it's fine. So we'll just close that out. Ignore that, that's a separate thing. Now can I rename it? Yeah, I can rename it. But the next thing you want to do is make sure that you have your textures, okay? These are the textures that were used for the vehicle. Don't know where else he got his textures from, but these are the ones that are supposed to be with the vehicle. We don't need the particles because those don't work, and we already reassigned them to new particles. So you're going to copy that. and you're going to put it in the textures folder. So we have the model and we have the textures. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy the name of this. We have all the new animations that have been created and associated with it as well. But we want to go to the super tank. So that's under units, military, M3 tank, and that's fine. Now, the settings for this tank could be changed later on. Ugh, is this because I have another monitor plugged in? Maybe. Okay, I think that's still recording, still works. But let's say you have your tank here. The first thing you want to do is search for ALO. And at the top here, we're going to replace the model. But then you also want to look for turret. And you have the bone for the turret and the muzzle and everything else here. But this is what's important, okay? You need to make sure that those bones align with the correct stuff. And I'll show you what you're supposed to do in order to see that, particularly if you don't want to go back into 3ds Max 9 and find it. You're going to copy your files, and you're going to go to your extraction with the Allo viewer, and you're going to put the models inside the models folder, and you're going to put your textures inside the textures folder. Now, they're already in there, but I'm just doing this for demonstrative purposes. We open up the Allo viewer, open model, and then we can search for CV. Well, actually, yeah, I think you can do it from there. And we have the MV-CV, so we just open. Then you have your tank. And this is what it's going to look like in the game. But what you can tell is that if we go to bones, the turret is named turret 00 and the barrel is named barrel 00. So you need to make sure that the turret name and the bone name match the same thing. Now you don't need to do that for muzzle. Muzzle A is correct. Leave that alone. But this part is essential in order to get the turret to work properly. Otherwise, it's going to fail. And then I don't think this vehicle has, well, I mean, it does have hard points. You just didn't get rid of them. Or at least you did get rid of them, but it's whatever. But turret here, barrel there, muzzle there, yada yada, blah blah blah. Everything should hypothetically be good to go. Now, the death model is still the Woolard model. You can swap that out for an explosion or whatever else. All the projectiles are going to be the same. But let's go into the game and test this out. Yep.
Making tracks. Nothing gets in my way. Armor on the move. We'll find a way.
Ooh. And that is why you save your projects. Even though everything is working, there's a crucial step that I forgot when I exported the model, which was to reapply the collision. You can tell that it ran over that unit right there and it did nothing. So what you can do is reopen the project that we created. So we just go to File, Open, go to Desktop, and we saved our project here. And then what we can do is we can go back to our layers here and we can unhide our collision boxes, our shaders, everything that was connected to it. Again, big swoopsy doodles. That was a mistake, my bad. We're just going to take that, export, make sure that, yeah, it is, I think. But export as an ALO, and we're going to export it to our mod directory. And that is going to replace all the files that are currently in there. Yep, collision is working. As you can see, because we replaced the animations, when we do this, it winds up. That's a little funkier than I thought it would be, but if the flute toots, it works with me. I believe you would be able to change it to use a different attack animation if you wanted to. But I can see that it defaulted to using the standard attack animation. So when it wound up, it just did that little jitter thing. But it's fine. Whatever works. But I think you get the point. That's how you get the thing in the game. That's how you configure the animations. That's how you do all the things that it needs to do.